Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar today, June 18th, Galileo K-12 Online and Insight 360, Bridging Student Learning, Assessment, Instruction, and Reporting, hosted by Assessment Technology Incorporated and eInstruction. The presentation is by Jason Feld, ATI Vice President, Corporate Projects, Sal Ramon, eInstruction Vice President of Sales, and Paul Buckley, eInstruction Senior Product Manager, and facilitated by myself, Jody Jepson. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us. Before we begin the presentation, I would like to go over some general housekeeping. The webinar is being recorded today and will be provided to all attendees after the presentation. We'd like to encourage you to send in questions throughout the presentation. They will be answered at the end of the webinar. So let's take a moment to walk through how to set the audio and how to submit questions. To initiate the audio portion, you may have seen a window pop-up box asking you to join the audio integrated conference. If you have closed that window, scroll up to the top of your screen. A drop-down menu will appear. Click the headset icon to initiate the audio portion. It's now time to go over how to submit a Q&A. Use the same Q&A function in WebEx. Scroll to the top, click the Q&A icon, and a pop-up box will appear. You are now able to submit your question in the white box to all panelists. If the Q&A is not set to all panelists, click the Q&A, go to the Ask field right here, and then see the drop-down menu to select all panelists. If you did not see the Q&A icon, scroll to the right, click the down arrow, and the Q&A option will appear here. If you are just now joining us for the webinar, I would like to welcome you to the Galileo K-12 Online and Insight 360 webinar, Bridging Student Learning, Assessment, Instruction, and Reporting, today, June 18th. Hosted by Assessment Technology Incorporated and eInstruction. As a reminder, I just wanted to let you know that we are recording the session today and we'll email it out to you after the presentation. We appreciate your interest in bridging student learning, so please allow me to now start the presentations with Dr. Jason Feld with Assessment Technology Incorporated.
Thank you, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the webinar today. And Jody, thank you for the introductions. I'm very excited about sharing this webinar with my colleagues over at eInstruction. We've been working together for a number of years to put together a number of innovations which we believe are not just simply different ways to integrate two technologies, but the integration of technology in a very intelligent and unique way. What I'd like to do to start off this morning's webinar is to talk to you a little bit about the innovations coming out of ATI and eInstruction. They are unique to this type of integration, and I thought I'd share them up front just to give you a framing. First, with regard to ATI, what we're bringing to this integration is a fully integrated and seamless instructional improvement and an instructional effectiveness system within one technology that can be used for educational decision making. As many of you out there already know, as you do use Galileo, Galileo is one of the few research-based solutions that are out there right now being used for assessment, instruction, and educator effectiveness. And that research has clearly indicated that implementation of Galileo does have a good impact on student learning and teacher effectiveness. One of the unique features we bring to the table as well is rapid adaptability to new legislation, changes in school district and educator needs over time, and of course we have an ongoing research program that allows us to build out the technology and make enhancements on a continuous basis. And finally, the Galileo system itself is directly aligned to the Common Core standards. And that includes not only assessment, but also instruction and reporting, since Common Core is simply not about assessment, but about the blending of assessment, instruction, and reporting to elevate student achievement. Similarly, our colleagues over at eInstruction have been putting in place some very advanced technology that make it possible to very quickly capture and grade and report and analyze data through a number of different multiple devices, which they'll be talking about a little bit later. Those devices are also supported by state-of-the-art tools for the teachers and students, including interactive whiteboards. And similar to ATI, the solutions that they are putting in place are supported by research-based activities that have been indicated to have increased student engagement and achievement. And finally, and again similar to ATI, the data is provided in real time so that information gets to the right people in a timely fashion so that educational decision making can be made. Again, these are pretty unique features in our systems which when combined produce a pretty intelligent integration, a very powerful solution. What I'd like to do briefly is just remind everybody about the goals of today's webinar, since this is what we'll be covering. The first is to walk you through how you can implement a seamless and very flexible approach to assessing student learning and providing differentiated instruction, interactive instruction, all geared toward increasing student learning. We'll also be talking about how you can very easily develop and integrate a locally designed instructional improvement and effectiveness system without having to have a bunch of silos in your district, but everything kind of integrated together. The integration that we'll be sharing today will also speak to the issue of evaluating student performance very quickly in real time and on a continuous basis, as well as longitudinal reporting over time. And then finally, we'll talk about how the partnership we have had in the past and now have going forward between Galileo and Insight 360 make it possible for teachers to really have at their fingertip information for assessment, instruction, and reporting using a number of different devices. What I'd like to do now, for the many of you out there that are not familiar with ATI and Galileo, is give you a brief walkthrough about the system. My colleague Sal at eInstruction will do the same once I'm done, so you can get a flavor of how our two organizations have been working together to create this new intelligent integration. First thing to say is we've been around for a long time doing a lot of research and evolving technology. In fact, going back all the way to 1986 with the major focus of really building technology that promotes learning. The uniqueness of our approach is based on the fact that on staff here we have expertise from a number of disciplines related to education and measurement, research programming, and the design of web applications. Having that expertise on staff makes it possible for us to evolve the technology very quickly and in alignment with what's happening out there in the real world. We are, as many of you already know, actually the first company in the nation to provide an online comprehensive instructional improvement and instructional effectiveness system, and we continue to evolve that system as we go forward. Today's webinar is an example of how that's been evolved with our partners over at eInstruction. And we're currently serving a large number of school districts across the nation. That number becomes important because it allows us to conduct research on a continuous basis, and that research actually is the bedrock of putting a system out there that truly provides credible and actionable information to guide instruction. With regard to Galileo, just want to give you a few high points here. It is a Common Core States aligned system. The important thing to note here is that the alignment with Common Core is not simply the delivery of Common Core type items, but actually the building and delivery of Common Core assessments that are customizable and provide many different ways in which to gather information, including benchmark assessments, formatives, computer adaptives, pre-posts, and so forth. That information from the assessments is immediately linked to the instructional component in Galileo, which we call instructional dialogues. And those can be used across any subject area, not just the state-tested areas. And I'll be talking a little bit about that later as I show you the part of the integration between 360 and Galileo. The dashboard technology in Galileo, while many of our, in fact, most of our clients say they're nice-looking dashboards. The more important thing about the dashboards is that they're actually actionable, and the data on them can be truly used to inform educational decision-making at all levels in the school district. And then finally, I just want to note that while the major interest across the nation is in the state tested areas for Common Core, we obviously do cover those in math and reading and English language arts and science and writing, including advanced areas of science. But we've also implemented an initiative that cuts across states to build out, vet, and certify assessment items that cover all the non-state tested areas. So that is an ongoing project that will continue going forward, and that we involve our district partners in when we do that. The last thing that I want to talk about here is something that both eInstruction and ATI think is a very important component of this integration as it relates to the use of data to guide instruction. And that is the importance of what is called item response theory in standards-based education. If you just drop down to the fourth bullet for a minute, and I'll just kind of go over that with you. If for no other reason, it's important for everybody to know that IRT is actually used in implementing virtually every statewide test across the country, and it's used for the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Moreover, both the Smarter Balanced and the PARC consortiums will be utilizing IRT in the tests that they develop. A couple of points to make about IRT, and I'll show you this visual first. Typically, most of the tools out there for standards-based education are still being built on really what we call classical test theory or raw scored data. Even if you have Common Core aligned items in your system, it's highly likely that the data you're getting out of it is primarily going to talk about the number of skills mastered, the percentage of skills mastered, but it's not really going to give you information that goes beyond how many things, if you will, a student has gotten right on a test. And that little circle on the left is kind of displaying two students who have taken an assessment that doesn't use IRT. One student might have gotten 60% correct, the other student 70% correct. We make the assumption that, in fact, the student that got 70% correct actually did better, but we really don't know that because we don't know the difficulty of the items that the student was actually assessed on. And in fact, if you administer a second assessment and the students have a higher percentage of items correct, it could be that the assessment is harder, or it could be that the assessment is actually easier. Or it could be that the students actually learn the material. We just don't know with the more traditional methods of measurement out there. Within an IRT approach, we do take account of item difficulty, so we're actually able to place the standards for Common Core as well as the items used to measure them on a continuous developmental scale. And by doing that, we can actually measure not simply performance on an item, but really the student's ability in that area of learning. And once we know the student's ability, we can actually identify where the student is on a developmental path and plan appropriate lesson plans and instruction for the student. In addition to which, with an IRT model, you're truly in a position to measure growth. The measurement of growth, simply by looking at how many more things a student can do, is not really a defensible method of measuring growth in a standards-based environment. I want to also show you what IRT looks like under the hood. What we're bringing up now is an item parameter report. This would be an example of a report that we generate through Galileo if, for example, you're administering your benchmark test with 360. And again, this is one example of the intelligent integration. We're taking the raw data that comes from the administration of an assessment in 360 and actually running an IRT model. What that IRT model allows us to do is truly ensure that the tests are highly reliable, highly valid, and measuring the things we want to measure in terms of student mastery of standards. Very quickly here, you'll see that we're able to generate a guessing parameter for an assessment, which is the likelihood that a student who really doesn't understand the concept will guess the right answer. We're identifying a very key component of IRT, which is item difficulty. That lets us know if in fact the assessment is truly measuring a range of difficulty. You don't want assessments that are too easy or too hard or just average. Assessments of those types will provide information only for some of the students in a classroom, but not all the students in the classroom. And then finally, the discrimination parameter in IRT, which lets us know if in fact the item and the objective being measured are valid indicators for students at different levels of ability. Without this information undergirding an assessment tool within a school district, it's very difficult, in fact nearly impossible, to measure growth over an extended period of time, and ensuring that in fact the measures you're using are sensitive to the students in your district, which is why we run these reports every time a benchmark is administered, either through Galileo for 360, and we provide this to the school district. This particular one administered with the use of 360, feeding data into Galileo, was administered to a little under 1,900 students, and you can see it has a very high reliability of 0.9. So this means this assessment will provide us with some really powerful information about student learning. I will come back to IRT a little bit later when we talk about some of the reports that are generated when data is put in with 360. But again, we wanted to kind of give you this background information so you have a sense of the integration. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Sal from eInstruction now, who has worked with me. Actually, we're going almost on 10 years now working together, so it's very good that he's here today with us and is able to share, along with his colleague Paul, some of the work they're doing on 360 and in eInstruction. Sal?
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. And let me just start out by saying what a privilege it is to partner with Jason and the team at ATI. As Jason mentioned, we've known each other for quite some time. Always love coming down to Tucson. Love the warm weather down here. So I'm absolutely thrilled to offer the new Galileo Insight 360 integration to ATI users. And some of the immediate benefits that the users will receive through this integration, one will be the ability to actually download rosters and then also access assessments and upload test data. And you can do all of this by the press of a button without having to do any kind of tedious importing or exporting of CSV files or XML files. So it's a really nice feature. Paul will describe and show that to you a little bit later in the presentation. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to share with you a little overview of eInstruction. We started out in 1981, and just a few fun facts about the strength and stability of eInstruction. First off, we serve over 100 countries worldwide with our product offerings. We also have over 8 million students, teachers, and professors that have benefited with the use of our product offerings and our technology. And some of our solutions are actually available in 48 different languages worldwide. In higher education, we've got a footprint in approximately 2,000 colleges and universities. And our solutions are used in various markets such as education, local and state and federal government, and also the commercial sector. From this slide, you can see that our mission is to help educators and students advance learning every day, and we do this through our learning cycle. And what I mean by that is it all starts with the teacher in the classroom providing instruction. And when they deliver this instruction, obviously it's in a captivating manner, and it leads to active collaboration and engagement with the students. And it's done through formative and summative assessment, and it's done on a continuous basis. And this provides empirical data, real-time dynamic feedback to make more informed decisions. This continuous loop is aimed entirely at improving student performance, and we do this on an ongoing basis. So this slide shows some of the products that eInstruction offers, and I spend a lot of time on planes. And when the person sitting next to me asks the question, well, what does eInstruction do? I really tell them it's as simple as 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I mean by that is we work in one primary market, and that is the education market. And if you were to break that down, we work within the two verticals of education, being higher education and K-12. Most of our business is absolutely done in the K-12 portion of that space. We provide solutions for 3 primary applications, those being testing, surveys, and data collection. And we do it with 4 product categories, that being hardware, software, content, and services. Now, if you break down all these 4 categories, in the hardware category, we are a manufacturer of student response systems, also known as clickers. We're also a manufacturer of mobile interactive whiteboards, or slates. We also produce and provide fixed interactive whiteboards. Those can be seen at the bottom of the slide. Then the second category, which is that software category, actually is our Insight 360 flagship product, which is the primary product offering for us in the K-12 market. And as I mentioned earlier, Paul will actually go over and describe and do a demo of that software, and we'll go over some of the rich benefits behind that software. The third category is actually our content category. We have ExamView, which is a test delivery mechanism or test delivery vehicle, but it's also got a number of content items, about 15,000 content items, and it comes in the back of publications and textbooks. The fourth category is training. And in training, we provide professional development services, we provide training services, we provide technical support services. We have a world-class technical support center that's located here in Arizona that provides technical support all over the world. Also wanted to talk a little bit about the rich tradition that eInstruction has in terms of the awards, the many awards that we've received through our innovative technology. So over the years, we've received a number of different awards. We've also hold several patents for our technology, allowing us to continuously evolve with the changing demands of the education climate. So now that I've shared a little bit of information about eInstruction, what I'd like to do is actually do a little bit of an overview regarding our flagship product, which is Insight 360, and talk about that ATI Galileo integration. So what makes Insight 360 such a powerful tool, I would say it's its ease of use. It's also completely mobile, and it allows the teacher to instruct from anywhere in the classroom. So if I look at the 3 fundamental benefits of Insight 360, first, it increases student collaboration through active engagement and formative instruction. It also enhances teacher effectiveness through immediate feedback. And finally, it improves overall student performance. So the 3 components that make up Insight 360, first of all, it is a desktop software, so it resides on any Mac or PC. And secondly, it requires a teacher device such as a Mobi, which is our slate, a Mobi 360, or even an iPad to drive the instruction in a mobile fashion. And finally, it requires student devices such as Pulse 360 clickers, iPads, or virtually any handheld device that students are using today. So if you look at Insight 360, it integrates directly with ATI Galileo, and it also leverages ExamView questions and content in a seamless fashion. So when I look at all these different devices, it begs a question. How do I maximize the ability to use disparate devices within my district? It's no wonder we've gone through this digital revolution. And when you look at all these things, instruction is done differently in the classroom. There's less paper and pencil tests that are being administered today than there were ever before. So the question really is, how do we cater to students and devices that use these mechanisms each and every day? And the answer is Insight 360. There's absolutely no restrictions to a blended environment as long as you can get to an HTML5 browser. This functionality feeds directly into the BYOD initiatives that are being carried out in many of the different school districts across the country. So this last slide here, before I turn it over to Paul, just closes out the loop. And again, our goal and philosophy is to teach, engage, and assess so we can improve student performance and we can close that student achievement gap. With Insight 360, we have the ability to constantly probe and check for understanding to determine whether we need to reteach the material or move on based upon the feedback that we're receiving dynamically. I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Paul Buckley, who's our Senior Product Manager. And Paul's going to actually provide you a demonstration of Insight 360 as well as the ATI Galileo integration. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Saul. I'm going to spend a few minutes now and show the Insight 360 software and describe some of the functions that are used normally. And then I'm going to show the integration specifically and show you how that works. This is the home page for Insight 360, and this is running on the same machine that we're running the webcast from. So Insight 360, the desktop component, can run on either a Mac or Windows machine. And this is the teacher's machine that would normally be used for instruction, whatever type of instruction that teacher's going to do. The other components of the Insight 360 platform are the teacher device and the student device. We're not going to see those directly because they're running on other platforms, but I'm going to talk about some of the functions that they're used for. The teacher device primarily is providing the ability for the teacher to be mobile throughout the classroom. So it allows the teacher to control the functions from the Insight 360 desktop to launch different programs, different instruction content to be used while teaching, as well as to launch some of the assessment capabilities of Insight 360. For example, if I was to bring up instruction content and begin teaching, I can use the teacher device to control that content which is running on the desktop, as well as to ask the students questions. Those questions can be created on the fly, on the spot, where a teacher just needs to collect that data, or they can be done through launching an assessment, which I'll show you how we launch a Galileo assessment. And in addition, we have something that we call Q tags. Q tags are a pre-constructed question that includes a question type and an answer and can be linked to a state standard or a Common Core standard. And those can be embedded into the content so that not only do I have the question in the right format and at the right place in the instruction content, but then I can easily reuse that assessment. That's our focus in Insight 360, is to integrate the collection of assessment data with the instruction and make it very, very easy for the teacher to use. The third piece of the platform, of course, is the student devices. And traditionally, those have been the handset devices or clickers that promote student engagement and promote the ability for the teacher to collect accurate data within the classroom. Recently, that's changed dramatically in the marketplace with the number of tablet devices and other devices that are showing up in classrooms. So Insight 360 supports the ability to use a very wide variety of student devices in the classroom. The traditional handsets, Saul mentioned our Pulse 360 handsets are one of our most popular handset products, as well as software that will run on an iPad, tablet, or the ability to connect student devices through a browser, which means students can be using smartphones, laptops, other tablets, any number of devices that can connect through a browser. So not only do we keep that student engagement high by using the device, we also collect that data very accurately, and we allow the teacher to see that in real time. We also allow the ability for mixed environments where students can be on more than one of those device types that I just mentioned. In addition, we've added the ability to have activities that interact between the desktop and tablets specifically, where a piece of data, a screenshot, or a document can be sent to a student device, to a student tablet, and the students can interact with it and provide their own annotations on it. We call that our constructed response feature, and that allows teachers to see what the students are doing on top of that. There's a very rich set of activities that can be associated with that feature. So that's a little bit about what Insight 360 does in the classroom. Again, our focus is to make it very easy on the teacher and make sure that the teacher knows exactly what's going on. I'm now going to show you the integration specifically with Galileo and how easy that is, and how data can be collected using Insight 360 in the classroom and transferred to Galileo. So the first thing I would need to do this is to have a course roster. And of course you can see right here that I don't have any classes or students in Insight 360 currently. Normally the way a teacher would get that data in is by importing it from a CSV file or adding it manually. And that's a very time-consuming, arduous task that teachers really would rather avoid. So this integration is very intelligent, and since this particular copy of Insight 360 is connected to Galileo, I have the ability to import from the Galileo plugin, which is just going to take a couple of clicks to indicate that I want to do an import and select the school that I'm importing from. And then, as you can see, it connected over the internet. Is very fast. And now when I go to my classes, I've got a class that I just imported, and I've got a list of students that are associated with that class. And I know that those came from Galileo because of the Galileo icon. So now I'm ready to go do all those things that I talked about earlier using this particular class. And in addition, when I want to run an assessment from that was imported from Galileo, I can go over to My Tests tab, and all I have to do is select the class that I want to run the assessment from. I select the test type, and there's a new test type of Galileo here in this drop-down. And then I've got, again, I've got the school and the class and the particular test that I want to run. And then I've got a session name here, which indicates that it's a Galileo session with a timestamp. I can rename this if I'd like to, but I'm going to go ahead and keep that because you're going to see it in a minute after the test is complete. And if I wanted to, I could set this test to be on a timer, but I'm going to run this one manually since it's just an example. And then I'm going to press start on my test player. My test player is going to come up. I'm going to minimize Insight 360, and I'm going to show you a response grid here so we can see what's going on during the test. Now, I have a couple of iPads in the classroom that are we're going to connect to this assessment. So give me just a second, and I'm going to do that. And then I'll get some of our colleagues to help us with that. Okay, so we have a few iPad tablets now that are connected. The student's actually connected by either a student ID or a sticker ID, and that's selectable by the teacher. And now, when I start the assessment here, those students are going to receive the response grid on their iPad, and they can enter. And you can see that as they're entering the questions, it's showing up here on my response grid. I'm going to switch this over to the teacher view because I want to show you that if I've got it on this teacher view, I actually have the ability to see not only the progress through the assessment, but I can see exactly what they entered, and I can see whether they got it correct or incorrect according to the question grading. This particular assessment was just a very short assessment with multiple choice questions, but I'm able to see the entire response that was entered, and I'm able to see that instantly as the students do that. Even if they were to go ahead and change an answer, I would see that change right here. And again, if you need to show this, if this is connected to a projector, then you go ahead and have the student view showing, and then there's no student or response information. So now that the test is done, I'm going to end it. And then I'm going to go back to Insight 360, and I'm going to go into results. Insight 360 uses a database to store all the results that it collects. And here I've got that session name that I just ran. So when I click on that, I'm going to load in those results. I've got those same student results that I just collected. And also, I am told here that the session is a read-only session. That's because it was from an imported assessment. And additionally, I'm told that the scores were sent to Galileo as soon as the test was completed. So as soon as I ended it, those results are sent back up. We don't actually allow the teacher to edit any of the responses here. We just simply send them right back to Galileo. So now I'm going to turn it back to Jason, and he is going to continue to show us how all this data that's collected by Insight 360 can be utilized inside of Galileo.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to focus now on three of the innovations within Galileo that take advantage of the data that's coming in through 360 and basically turn it into information that can truly be used to look at student growth, to plan learning opportunities, instruction for students, and to look at outcomes. The first of these has to do with innovations within Galileo that empower teachers as educators and students as learners. Again, the data that is coming in through 360 will allow a number of things to happen once in Galileo. And these are pretty much the same things that happen if you're simply administering the assessment through Galileo. The most important thing I'd like to talk about first has to do with differentiated instruction. As you recall from earlier, the old types of measurement models that have been used to look at student learning basically depend heavily on raw scores and percentages. And that's fine, and they have some partial instructional value if you want to do item-level differentiated instruction. However, within a Common Core environment, we're required and it makes sense to engage in instruction at two other levels of differentiation. The first has to do with instruction that focuses on standards mastery, and to look at standards mastery, as I've indicated earlier, an IRT analysis of the data must be conducted so that you can actually have interval level information about the student and a measure of the student's ability rather than simply a measure of how many items a student got scored correctly on a test. And the other optimal instructional value that comes out of Galileo has to do with being able to differentiate students who are at different levels of achievement. For example, high achievers who are exhibiting a lower growth. For that, we run a categorical growth analysis, which allows us to actually look at expected growth based on student ability and compare that to the growth that actually is occurring in a classroom, and use that information to guide instruction. Once we pull that data together within the system, it is represented for the teacher, for the principal, and for the district on Galileo Online dashboards. The important thing to note here as we look at the dashboards is we believe usability of data is not simply a matter of having some nice bar graphs or pie charts, but rather that the data is defensible, that it's credible, and that it's actionable. As you saw earlier, we are running data analysis continuously on Galileo assessments to ensure their reliability and validity. What I want to show you here is a couple of views of the data once it's in Galileo from 360. And we're just going to kind of look at a few pieces here, and we'll come back to them later. The first view I want to take here is a school level view, and we're just for now going to hold off on the instructional effectiveness widgets in this dashboard and slide down to the data that's run with IRT and categorical growth. As you can see here from the middle dashboard, what we're able to do with IRT analysis is actually identify what the expected growth will be, and in this case all those dots represent different schools within the district, actually different teachers. And we're also able to identify what the cut score will be for proficiency. The reason we can do this is because we're correlating with and forecasting student performance on the statewide tests. We do it currently now for the tests that are in place, and we'll be doing it going forward with the Common Core assessments. You can hover over any one of these data points, and you can actually see the classroom, the amount of growth, that's IRT growth, and the overall developmental level or IRT score. You can also click, for example, and in this case we're looking at high. Go ahead and click on this one. We're looking at students with higher growth and lower achievement, and of course we can see that that is occurring within a particular classroom, a particular student. And again, we can look at this at the school level and at the student level. The other two reports you're looking at really are hierarchical linear model reports that we run. The one on the right will actually show you the distribution of scores, in this case ELA, math, and science for each of the grades. And on the right side, we just provide another summary of where the teachers, and in the instances of a teacher level report, the students fall. We're going to go ahead and go over directly to a staff view of this. So you can get a picture of that as well. The staff actually receives a number of important dashboards. This one is used to provide results to the teacher on assessments. We're going to click on benchmark results, for example, and you'll see on the benchmark results report, the teacher is able to rapidly grab the area that assessments have occurred on, and a number of different reports show up. The bottom one we're looking at here basically places all the benchmark assessments on a common scale, so we can look at trends in student learning over the course of the year. Again, with just basic raw score data or percent data, this really cannot be accomplished. But this data is also transformed for the teacher into instructional planning. We're going to go ahead and click on the moderate risk category here, and what you'll be able to see for this particular classroom is this group of students for differentiated instruction, the moderate risk group. And because we're running an IRT model, we can actually communicate directly what type of learning experience needs to occur in order for the student to move forward. Those are going to be linked to instructional tools, which I will now be talking about as we move over to innovations that facilitate Common Core. So we'll go ahead over to the next slide now. And what I want to communicate to you about Common Core implementation is, as I said earlier, it's not just about assessment, it's about assessment and the blending of that with instruction. Again, as assessment data is gathered through Insight 360, it's pulled into Galileo, it makes it possible for us to actually link assessment results to instructional planning aligned with Common Core, and we do that through instructional dialogues. There's not enough time today to give you a tremendous detail on those dialogues, but we do want to show you a couple of examples of dialogic instruction within Galileo, so you get a flavor. Typically what will happen in dialogues is there'll be professional development information for the teacher and instructional information about what will be learned. In the case of this particular dialogue, we're looking at explaining, exploring, and predicting abstract phenomena. So we put in there, in this case, the goals for science. This particular area focuses on what scientific models are. So again, we provide a rich source of information about those models. And within this dialogue, you can see we're connected to other dialogues. So for example, if I go ahead and click on the dialogue for physical sciences, because we want this to be very interactive for the student, it will actually bring up instructional information that not only provides the text about what happens as it relates to temperature and kinetic energy, but the student can actually see what that means in terms of action within an instructional dialogue. In addition to that, the instructional dialogues within Galileo, or what we call dialogic curriculum, also allow the teacher, as you saw with a demonstration of 360, to engage the student in assessment and provide immediate feedback to the student as a result of that. We're going to kind of jump to another part of this dialogue here. This one happens to do with modeling and how we use dialogues to help modeling life science. You see here, of course, the student is engaged in an activity where they're dragging the planets to the correct positions. This, by the way, instructional technology is very similar to the technology we're implementing to provide Common Core aligned benchmark assessments that have technology enhanced items. The difference here is, of course, you're seeing the student is getting feedback, and similarly, if we go to another slide within the application, we can see how we can embed a particular item. This is going to be a basic Common Core aligned multiple choice item, and the student responds here to a particular choice, and again the system provides direct feedback to the student. So again, what we're accomplishing here in terms of this innovation, many of these components, of course, as is the case with eInstruction technology, are patented by ATI because of their uniqueness and their innovation. But we're blending instruction and assessment all in one location, bringing the data in from 360 when assessment data is captured there, and actually creating a tremendous amount of value for its use in elevating student achievement. The last piece I want to talk about here in terms of innovations in our work here at ATI and how it connects to the integration with 360 has to do with educator effectiveness. As you know, of course, there's a lot of legislation around the country now related to educator effectiveness. The view of our district clients is that while in those states that have to have educator effectiveness, they need something in place. Even in those states where there isn't educator effectiveness, school districts really want to have a seamless system to help support professional development of the teachers and link that to student outcomes. So even in non-states, actually states that don't have legislation, they're implementing this as well. I will show you real quickly what the Educator Effectiveness Dashboard looks like. Generally, we are able to pull together information about teacher performance, information about student learning in both state and non-state tested areas, weight that information according to the district's needs, and actually then compile it to produce not only an overall effectiveness score for the teacher, which you see right here in the middle of this school view, and this is of course a drill down dashboard, so you can actually see information on staff members that can use to guide professional development. But this particular widget also allows you to establish the different variables that you want to put in place in order to help not only observe how a teacher in a class is doing, but how you want to weight them. On the left side, you're basically looking at information that has to do with performance observations of a teacher. We can build teacher performance scales. We can take a scale that a district has developed and put it into Galileo, or we can grab data as well. The bottom line here is when all that data is pulled together, we can generate information that is not only used to guide professional development for the teacher, but to provide the teacher with very rich information about student growth through those categorical growth reports that you see here. You'll notice that we're showing math right now for the categorical growth. We can easily switch over to another subject area, say, for example, English language arts. And when we switch over to English language arts, you can see the data on student learning is immediate and very understandable to the teacher. Again, the nice thing about this integration is that we have found a way to take the data that's coming out of 360, pull that into Galileo, and use an IRT analysis to link the data not only to instructional improvement activities, but also educator effectiveness activities. And we think all these types of intelligent integration are what make this really wonderful relationship we have with eInstruction, a relationship that is not only unique, but also of tremendous value for both the districts that eInstruction work with, the districts that we work with at ATI, and the districts that we have been working with together and look forward to working with together over the next year and years to come. With that, I'm going to stop. I note that we have a number, oh my goodness, we have a ton of questions that have come in here. We're going to try to answer some of them for you, and then those that we can't answer, we will get that information out. So at this point, you've got a bunch that came into you, Sal, so I will go ahead and turn it over to you, and maybe we'll just go back and forth and we'll try to answer 5 or 6 questions. So Sal, over to you.
That's great. Thanks, Jason. So here's a question that just came up. It says, can teachers use content from any source to deliver lessons? And so the answer is absolutely. They can definitely use any content in any format at any time. And here's the deal. We understand that teachers, they get married to their content. They've been using it for an eternity, and they want to continue to use it. Therefore, we've created this open environment that allows teachers to actually Q-tag, and Paul described what Q-tagging was earlier. So it's a type of a barcode type feature, and within the software you can link it to state and Common Core standards. And finally, also in the Q-tag, you can Q-tag lessons from competitors and take advantage of those lessons that have been created over a period of time.
Thanks, Sal. First one I got in is this one comes from California. It's what is the major benefit of moving data from 360 into Galileo? There are actually, well, one, it's a great question. There are actually a number of benefits, but I think I want to highlight maybe the top 2, if you will. I kind of talked about them earlier. The major benefit of moving data from 360 into Galileo is the same benefit that you have when you're just using Galileo and assessing the students directly through that, and that is that the system is research-based and uses a very robust measurement model. So we take data that is raw data and convert it into data that is actually highly useful for Common Core assessment and instruction using those IRT models. Again, without IRT, you're really left with limits on how you can differentiate instruction based on raw data or percentile data. The other major benefit of moving information into Galileo is the seamless link between assessment, instruction, reporting, and doing that on a continuous basis with a number of different types of assessment tools in place. In this way, you have a way to actually monitor growth over time, and you have a way to get information to all the stakeholders in a timely fashion. The third major benefit, and again, there are many, but these are the top 3 that come to mind for me, is that districts really are very concerned about the credibility of data that they're using for Common Core instruction. And as you saw earlier, we take great pains to ensure that the assessment tools that are administered from Galileo have very strong reliability and validity associated with them, in addition to which correlate them with the state test so we can forecast performance early on in the year, throughout the year. So really the credibility and defensibility of data is another key major benefit of that integration. Sal, you want to go ahead and take the next one?
Yeah, you bet. So this one comes in from Dottie, and Dottie asks a really good question here. She says, so can Insight 360 work in a blended environment? So as Paul mentioned earlier, you bet. It'll work in a mixed environment, and students can really take advantage of their mobile devices along with using eInstruction branded clickers. So you can use them in the same setting to respond to questions that are being asked. So very, very easy to use that. And obviously the world is moving in the direction of these mobile devices, and we encourage the use of those devices to be used with our software.
Thanks, Sal. I like this one. This one came in from Florida. It's interesting. This is actually from a teacher, and she says, I'm used to using PowerPoints in my classroom to present material, and you talked about instructional dialogues, and this is kind of where I chuckled when I saw this. So are instructional dialogues basically PowerPoints on caffeine, or are they something different? Great question. Actually, they are, as you see, something quite different. In fact, the webinar that we did with eInstruction today is actually running on an instructional dialogue within Galileo, so you can see how easy it is to actually pull in all kinds of different information and get it out there for students to use and to learn from. The dialogic technology is critical going forward in that it is the technology mechanism for blending instruction and assessment within the classroom and over time, as is called for in the Common Core initiative. Not only do we build instructional dialogues here at ATI for lots of content area, but we provide the same tools and training for school districts so that teachers can actually learn how to build, use, and even share within and across school districts instructional dialogues. One of the things that we've been talking with eInstruction about over the last couple of months is in terms of a next step, perhaps looking at the ways in which just like an assessment can be administered through 360, see what we can do about maybe integrating the instructional dialogue technology as well, so that you can do it not only within Galileo, but if you have 360, possibility of doing it there, and we'll keep you posted on that. But that was a great question. Thanks for the caffeine comment. Sal?
So here's another question, and I'm glad that Jason just put us on the spot with that. And so this question appears to have come up quite a bit, Jason. It's how much does Insight 360 cost? And so if I wanted to answer this question, it would simply say, it depends upon the user needs. So we price Insight 360 in a number of different ways. It can range anywhere from $300 to $1,500 per classroom and beyond. So it really does depend upon the user needs. And what we would do is we'd like to put you in touch with a regional sales executive that can actually come on site, do a little site consultation, determine what those needs are. We absolutely offer multiple unit discounts for site-wide, either school-wide implementations or district-wide purchases. So we'd be happy to work with you on that, on the pricing piece. Jason?
All right, thanks, Sal. All right, we've got time for one last question here. This comes from a district in Arizona, our home state. Hello, Arizona. And this is actually a district that is not using Galileo, but they're trying to want to learn more about eInstruction and Galileo. Their question is basically, are the item banks in Galileo and the instructional tools separate cost from Galileo? Good question, a reasonable question. The answer is pretty short. No, they are not. When a district is implementing Galileo, everything that is in the system, including instructional content, item content, enhancements to the system, the research, bringing in of other test data, statewide tests, and correlating them with benchmarks and predicting. That's really all part of what we do. Again, we just want to provide school districts with a very integrated system so that they can move from a siloed approach to a more integrated and more research approach for Common Core. So we're quite frankly happy to provide the entire system to a district and not break it out into separate components. We think that works best for a school district. These are great questions. I thank you very, very much. There are a bunch more that Paul and Sal and I will respond to and get that out quickly. Again, if you've got more questions, please feel free to contact us via email or phone. That information has been provided to you. Go to the eInstruction website. There's lots of rich information there about what they're doing with 360 and their other tools and what they're doing with us. Similarly, go to the ATI website. In addition to this webinar, we've also posted a previous webinar on Common Core instruction and on educator effectiveness, and those are available for you to look at as well. Again, I personally want to thank my colleagues over at eInstruction for their time and their energies and their talents today, and thank all of you for participating in this webinar.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it as well, and thanks everybody for your time. Hopefully we get a chance to do this again real soon.
We want to tell you that this does conclude our webinar today. We thank you for your participation and look forward to speaking with you soon. A reminder that a recording of the webinar cast today will be sent out to you via email, as well as full answers to all the questions that were submitted. Again, thank you for your participation.